Might revisit this graphic at some point, but we are ready to head down into the action here. We got Ethan Wallace on 4-color control versus Junyuan Zheng on Azorius Hammer. And both these players are very experienced pilots. They've been playing Magic for quite some time, so I think we're going to see a lot of great Magic here.
Yeah, this will be a very interesting deck. I think this is going to be one of the few we've actually seen with a companion. It looks like Ethan's going to start off with the polluted Delta, and we're going to pass it over to Zheng.
Yeah, I actually watched Junyuan. He was playing Phoenix recently at SCG, and he is just very, very good player. I really enjoy watching him play.
Yeah, I think both of these players have been, I've seen popping up here and there with top finishes. I think Ethan, I believe, is what the catatonic walrus on Twitter.
Yes.
Which I think is one of the best Twitter names.
It's pretty nice. And he's always a champion for whatever control deck that he likes. So no matter what the format, I think Legacy is his format of choice, but he'll always try to sleeve up a Hollow Fountain here or there, and I guess in that format a Tundra. But
it looks like Zheng is going to start off the turn with a fetch land, finding a plains, playing a Sigarda's Aid and a Ornithopter.
Yeah, I really have no experience in this matchup. A lot of Ethan's answers, like Prismatic Ending, are, kind of so-so, sorcery speed, but he does have Leyline Bindings, he does have Solitude, so on paper, it feels like Ethan should be favored.
Leyline Binding cleaning up the Sigarda's Aid. It definitely has the ability to be aggressive if you're Hammer, but some of the cards do not line up particularly well for Ethan. Something like Urza Saga, which Zheng plays right here, as well as a Stoneforge Mystic. Some of those cards can be very difficult to deal with, especially if you are trying to deal with one of those threats, but can't deal with the other one. Urza Saga itself, just the artifacts, can provide a lot of pressure. And Stoneforge Mystic, obviously a great card itself.
Yeah, I think if Ethan gets to around turn 4, turn 5, and doesn't feel like he's being threatened by a whole lot that's on the board, he's probably favored. I think these early turns are definitely the most important for Junyuan.
What do you think he fetches here?
Colossus Hammer, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think when a deck is as interactive as Ethan's, you just kind of want to keep getting hammers because you're not expecting your Stoneforge to stick around. You don't want to get something like a Cauldra.
Okay. Ethan's gonna fetch end of turn, get a Triome. Looks like Ketrick Triome are the Teamer one.
Yeah. And what's the other one? I'm drawing a blank on that one.
I believe that is Rafine's Tower.
Okay, that's the Esper one, right?
Esper, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the game of which Triome is this has not been fun.
Yeah, Ethan's not really doing us much help here. He's got 2 different alt arts, so
basic planes for Ethan, and we're gonna cast a Teferi here. Choosing to bounce the Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, it seems weird on the surface, but that might be the only way Ethan has to deal with, say, if Cauldra was already wrapped up for Junyuan, maybe that would be something he's worried about.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously Junyuan is going to get more value out of that Stoneforge Mystic that comes back.
We're going to see the Urza Saga tick up to 2. So now we can create Construct if we have an additional land here. And that Ornithopter is going to menacingly stare at our Teferi.
Yeah, unfortunately, if it was a Memnite, we could attack down the Teferi pretty cleanly, but just a note too.
Mm-hmm. Ethan's tapped out. What do we do while we have a tapped out opponent as Hammer?
That's very interesting, because also the Saga's at 2, but I'm not sure if Junyuan has another land. That's also another question, because you probably want to get as much value out as you can out of your Saga and make a construct here, but you're right. Ethan is tapped out here. This is one of your windows to start resolving some stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you have Sigarda's Aid, Hammer,
yeah,
that's a great afternoon, and we're starting off with a Sigarda's Aid.
And we know there's a Hammer hanging out there, so unless Ethan has a Solitude, he's going to at least get bopped for a little bit.
It looks like the Hammer's coming into play. It's equipped to our Ornithopter, and we see it crash in. It looks like it's going to attack Ethan for 10 points of damage, knock Ethan down to 8 points. Playing a follow-up Urza Saga, and it looks like we're going to pass the turn.
So yeah, that was a very good turn for Junyuan. Faded the Solitude there, which I think was very important. And ooh, we're already going to Kahira. That can't be good.
Little fumble there, but it looks like a Misty Rainforest is going to be entering the graveyard. Go down to 7 life for Ethan. Get one of my favorite island arts.
That's pretty nice.
And it looks like Kahira is coming to hand.
So notably, he does have Leyline Binding mana, has all the land types he needs. So I think that is what Ethan is representing here. Unless he drew a Solitude for turn as well, that would also be nice.
I think I can see a couple copies of Counterspell peeking out there. But yeah, unless there is some kind of interaction, it could be Prismatic Ending as well, right? Because of the Teferi Plus.
Very true.
Then going to untap, going to look at the sagas, and it's going to ponder what they're going to do before activation. I mean, you're going to lose the land at least, but you do get a 1-mana spell. This opens up a lot of lines for Zheng here.
Yeah, so take a look at his deck list. Gingerbrute is hiding out, so that is something to consider. I wouldn't expect something like a Shadow Spear. I don't think another hammer really does a whole lot. Unless you already... that doesn't really... Yeah, it doesn't really do anything. So I'm kind of expecting a creature, I think.
Yeah, I imagine Gingerbrute, but it could be Haywire Might, potentially.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're going to float 1 mana, let that tick up to 3 counters, and we're going to start searching.
Yeah, we're not too interested in making a construct. I'd be kind of surprised if we were at this point. And he's eyeing up a hammer. I think I saw him eyeing it up.
Which I certainly understand the choice. I mean, like you said, the deck is named Hammer Time. Like, it makes sense to grab it, but...
The reason to do it here is if you think you can put a hammer somewhere else and present 2 lethal threats. But no, we're going to opt for the Gingerbrute here.
Gingerbrute is definitely a very good threat, adding a second body to the battlefield.
It's weird to say Gingerbrute is a good threat, but...
It's definitely a card, I think, from Throne of Eldraine with all the cards that are in that set. Not the one I would think would be seeing play in Modern.
Yeah.
But to be fair, some of the other ones did see play in Modern until they weren't allowed in Modern anymore. So
yeah, I didn't put that guy in my limited decks. I would draft him like 14th or 15th, and I'd be like, yeah, you're not going to make it.
I mean, I can't play that in my Black-White Knights deck. I mean...
Yeah. It's just a guy, so... Okay, so we're going to have another hammer here with the Stoneforge Mystic. So if Junyuan has a land, we should be...
Well, it still has the floating mana from the initial Urza Saga, so that is something we can put into play. Maybe potential misstep. Maybe we don't need to tap the Urza Saga, the second Urza Saga for mana, since we already had the one floating.
I would be surprised if we're using Saga's ability this turn, because we have to use Gingerbrute to activate to give the haste. So if we have a land here, we can attack with 2 lethal threats, but I'm not sure. Do we have?
No, the Gingerbrute actually is haste naturally. So
oh, it does.
Yeah, okay. We're going to be able to attack in, and that's game number 1.
Yeah, very, very well played there by Junyuan. Recognizing how to get 2 lethal threats into play that turn, and Ethan didn't have a Solitude the turn before, so he probably didn't have one, so he was probably sitting on 1 removal spell there, so very well played.
Yeah. And I think this is a matchup that you could expect to see. I think both these decks are fairly popular. Hammer Time, I think, is in my top 5 for decks to be playing in the format right now. 4-color control always has its diehard players. So if we're looking at this matchup, what are we interested in actually bringing in? It looks like we do have a couple copies of Sanctifier and Vec, Lavinia Azorius Renegade, Blacksmith Skill, March of Otherworldly Light, Pithing Needle, Draenith Magistrate, Path to Exile, Spell Pierce, Mana Leak, and a Hallowed Moonlight to round out the 15 card for Hammer. What do you like?
So I could see the pair of counter spells, the Spell Pierce and the Mana Leak. Blacksmith Skill also seems pretty appealing for solid 2 Leyline Binding type effects, because you also protect your hammers and whatnot from other effects that exile. The only card that I'm kind of like, maybe is the Magistrate if you really care about Solitude. But I think I would be surprised to see that come in. I don't think Junyuan has enough cards to maybe take out. He has a lot of good cards versus Blue White already. He already has 2 Blacksmith Skills in his main deck, 2 Spell Pierce. Doesn't really have a lot of bad cards here. So I think that's what I would expect out of Junyuan.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely see that. If we go over to Wallace's list, we see 4 copies of Endurance, 2 Blossoming Calm, 2 Dovin's Veto, 2 Hollowed Moonlights, a Chalice of the Void. I think that'd be the third copy. Obviously, our Kira as our companion, a March of Otherworldly Light, a Subtlety, and a Wear Tear. What are you interested out of this sideboard?
So a lot of the interactive spells, the March and the Wear Tear, seem pretty good. I would have to play the matchup to see how good Chalice is. It definitely does look good on paper, but if you're putting that on 0 on 1, I don't know which one is better. I would imagine 1 is definitely where you want to be with that card, or if do you just want to play 1 on 0 and just get rid of Memnites and Ornithopter if you're on the play. Other cards that are kind of interesting, maybe if you have cards you want to take out and you want to play Endurance just as a guy, Subtlety maybe. But as I said when I was commentating Living End earlier, I didn't really feel that Subtlety is a good card versus Hammer. It's not really what you want to fight over. But maybe the context for 4-color control is different. That is actually what you want to be fighting over, like these Stoneforge Mystic type cards. Yeah. But I think Ethan has a decent main deck already. Maybe some of these counter spells that are a bit expensive, like Archmage's Charm, Broker's Charm, those type of cards get the cut. Maybe these 2 Jace the Mind Sculptors, Teferi, Hero Dominaria. So actually, he has a decent amount of cards that he could easily cut. So maybe he could slide in a lot of these cheaper cards that aren't really home runs.
Yeah, Jace the Mind Sculptor, maybe not the best versus an army of small 1-mana creatures.
Yeah, definitely not. I could still see leaving Teferi, Hero Dominarian, but I don't think Jace I'm too interested in. You still want something to shut the door. And Teferi's better at that than Jace, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Both players taking a mulligan down to 6 cards. Hopefully we can find a more competitive 6 for both players here. Who does mulliganing actually benefit here? Do you think it's better for the Hammer deck or better for 4-color control?
I think it depends on the Hammer player's hand and how fast it is.
Okay.
If Junyuan has a very fast hand, I think it favors him. I think if, like I said before, Ethan, if he gets to turn 4, turn 5, and he feels pretty comfortable about the board, then I think the mulligans favor him. We do see some Chalices hanging out of Ethan's hand, so I'm very interested to see what Ethan's going to do with those this game.
It looks like Ethan is strongly considering keeping.
Yeah, I think he's mulling over what to put back. He put an island first and then kind of reconsidered.
You're always in this position as a control deck that you always just want to make your land drops and cast spells. Obviously, there's a balancing act to that, so maybe the island ends up being something you can afford to, put back, and sometimes it's not. So definitely tough. Ethan's going to start off the game with a Scalding Tarn.
And I think that told me everything I wanted to know. He had 1 Chalice, and he does not value it on 0 at all. He wants to put this on 1 at all times. So I think that's how Ethan is going to play the matchup. That's something I would need to have the reps with to know how good it is on 0.
Absolutely. Yeah, once again, I think a very nuanced matchup here just because you are playing against a deck that is so mana efficient while you're trying to be this kind of main phase deck for the most part. You really do need to make sure your spells are having their maximum impact if you're expecting to win. It looks like this Scalding Tarn is going to fetch out a Rafine's Tower, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, I think on a mulligan too, the Chalice might be better on 1.
And I think Ethan's going to agree with you. We see an island come down and a Chalice of the Void for 1 mana. I think it looks like we might see some interaction coming from the Hammer deck. Keep in mind that they do actually play some interaction in blue cards, things like Spell Pierce, maybe making its way into play here.
Yeah, I believe he already announced it because Ethan puts the graveyard up. You'll see a Spell Pierce. I think that was really key for Junyuan to have there.
That definitely could have changed the entire texture of this game, but it's not going to be in play. And Hammer's going to be able to play on, continue to play some 1-drops. We're going to have a untapped Hallowed Fountain here, and we're going to follow up with a Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, really the best, I think, cards that Junyuan could have versus Ethan's draw here is some sort of interaction for Chalice, plus your most powerful 2-drop while the shields are down because you had to cast that Chalice.
Let's see, we're looking through the deck. maybe we get Hammer, maybe we use this opportunity to get our Sword of Fire and Ice, or maybe we just get Culture Complete.
Yeah, really? I could see an argument for everything but Shadow Spear here. I think I would be, maybe, I don't know. Okay, Sword. I think that makes the most sense. You're expecting your stuff to die, so you just want to the most powerful card that isn't Hammer.
Still castable on 3 mana. And that's going to go to the hand, pass the turn back over to Wallace, who's going to untap, play at Shock Breeding Pool, and play a Teferi Time Raveler. It's going to be 2 damage for Ethan, but it looks like we're going to be returning that Stoneforge Message back to the hand.
Okay, so we're going with the same line. So Ethan really values just keeping the board clear if he just keeps bouncing Stoneforge Mystics like he did in game 1.
Thanks and untap. Looking at a hand, we can see a Arid Mesa in the front. We know there's a Stoneforge Mystic and a Sword of Fire and Ice in hand still. Trying to find something that's going to line up pretty well against this Teferi Time Raveler. Horizon Canopy comes into play, as well as that Stoneforge Mystic we already know is there.
Yeah, I think Junyuan's pretty okay with recasting Stoneforge. I think Ethan's, it looks like his overall game plan is just, you know, tax the Hammer player early on their mana, and then eventually get to these later turns where you don't feel as bad and you can start casting these Archmage's Charm type cards and start pulling ahead that way.
The Stoneforge Mystic pulled up a Colossus Hammer, but we're going to see a Haywire Might actually come into the battlefield for Zheng as well.
I think that's the only way Junyuan has to interact with something like a Chalice that's already on the board. Looking at his deck.
Yeah, it's a very interesting card that we've seen come out of a recent set. Once again, not a lot of new additions for this deck, but that is definitely one of the bigger ones we've seen make it into Modern.
Yeah, getting a Naturalize you can get off a Saga is very, very nice. Ethan's going to take a look at the Might.
Yeah, Haywire Might actually be making its way into Legacy. It shows up in some of those mono blue. That is an Archmage's Charm targeting the Might here.
I love this play.
Really, I mean, one of the best things about Might is it allows you to exile artifacts or enchantments, and it looks like Ethan's going to take that, and now a lot of those artifacts that are in the Hammer deck are going to be a little less effective.
So I did a bunch of things there. One, you don't want your Teferi to die, so you don't want to leave this 2 power on the board. 2, you're going to get some sort of Naturalize, you know, effect out of your Archmage's Charm once you take it, so it really did a lot for Ethan there, even though it seemed kind of meddling to take a Haywire Might.
Yeah, definitely the potential of it is very high. Then gets a turn back. We untap, we'll look at our land, play an Arid Mesa. And now we're debating how do we get through this? The Arid Mesa is going to make its way to the graveyard. We're going to search our library, find a land, and I'm not sure what the plan is for Zheng here.
Yeah, it seems pretty difficult from this spot. He's going to need to play a lot more of his... he's got to bait out this Might somehow. And with the Sword of Fire and Ice, it's going to be tough. Like, he can't just like play the Sword of Fire and Ice right here. So...
the Arid Mesa is going to find a Plains. We're going to go find our... what is that card called again?
That is Pure Steel Paladin.
Pure Steel Paladin. Oh, man. That one is a really nice card. Being able to equip our equipment for free.
I think that's the best card you can have here is, you know, if we're going to get Haywire Mighted, at least we're drawing a card once we cast our hammers and whatnot. And I do believe I saw a Mana Leak hiding out in Junyuan's hand.
Ooh.
So he's going to debate if he's going to play a hammer, he's going to pass. He's going to hold out that Mana Leak.
You're a Pure Steel Paladin. Yeah, whenever an equipment enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and being able to, if you have enough artifacts at least, being able to equip your equipment for 0 mana, reducing that cost for hammer from 8 mana down to 0.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's got triple Black Lotus.
Yeah, this card has never really made its rounds in Modern in a fair way, as I'm saying in here. Usually played it in like something like Cheerios, where you're playing a bunch of 0 mana equipment, drawing a bunch of cards, playing a grape shot after you do all that. But this is doing it the fair way. And Junyuan's gonna make an interesting play here. He's gonna put in Stoneforge Mystic, or Sword of Fire and Ice off of Stoneforge Mystic into the Haywire Might.
Yeah, I'm absolutely untapping and drawing a card. And I think we do know there's at least a hammer also in the deck. So, we have the potential to put these into play, and maybe if we have to use the might here, there's a Colossus Hammer coming into play.
Yeah, it really depends on Junyuan's hand of how he wants to force the action on the Might. I can't really tell at this point, if Sword of Fire and Ice was right to put in or not. I'm sure it was, because Junyuan is very good.
So it looks like Ethan is thinking about this Colossus Hammer. Do we want to let it come into play? Are we going to counter this? What is Ethan going to do?
Yeah, I think I saw another hammer hiding out in Junyuan's hand, which would be the third artifact, which means we can kind of move our equipment as we like. So I imagine Ethan will not let it get to that point, no matter what. And okay, I like this. We're going to march the Pure Steel Paladin to deny the card draw and the ability to move our equipment around.
Interesting. And it looks like we still have the breeding pool untapped for the Haywire Might, so we have the ability to exile an artifact if it does make its way onto a creature here as well.
Yep, and I think Junyuan wants a fight over this. He's been gripping on this Mana Leak, and I think this Pure Steel might... Oh, he decides against it. Okay. I thought the Pure Steel would have been too good to let go. I think that's might have been his best start here, but he decides against it.
Pure Steel's going to make its way to the exile, while the Arid Mesa makes its way to the battlefield. We've got a Stoneforge Mystic and looking across at a Teferi and a Haywire Might. We're going to equip the Stoneforge Mystic with the Sword of Fire and Ice, and we're going to enter combat.
Yeah, and this is just forcing the action on the Might.
Might's going to make its way back to its rightful graveyard, and Sword of Fire and Ice is going to make its way into exile. 2 life for Ethan, a notable additional effect for Haywire Might. The card just says so much text for an uncommon.
Yep.
And it looks like we're passing the turn back to Ethan.
So Junyuan and I actually had an interesting decision there twice. Is the Mana Leak on the Pure Steel Paladin getting marched up Otherworldly Light. He decided against it. He also had another Stoneforge in hand, and he could have gotten Cauldron, which might have been pretty good because you have 2 Stoneforges in play, and so Ethan would have to kill both.
Ethan looks like tapping 2 islands and playing a Chalice of the Void on 1 mana, hoping to shut down some of the hammer threats you expect to see out of that deck. Zheng's going to fetch for a Plains in response, and it looks like we are going to draw a card.
So I'm really curious. Junyuan has been really gripping onto this Mana Leak. I really want to know what he wants to do with it, what he's scared of the most.
It feels like we're running out of time. It's maybe you want it for a rainy day, but
I'm dumb. There's a Teferi in play.
Oh, there's a Teferi in play.
Jesus.
Yes. I forgot about it too, honestly.
Yep.
So with Teferi in play now, we are just trying to get this board into a position where we can either get in the board to make it relevant, or we can try to find a way to contribute to the board here.
Yeah. So never mind. Junyuan's plays, I think, made a lot of sense there.
Yeah. And while we're kind of looking at these deck lists right now, right as we're waiting to see what the next bit of action is, it will take a second to kind of talk about these decks too, because this is a really tough position. Obviously, I think I would like to say that Junyuan is a little bit behind on board.
Yep.
But is also up a game, right? So even if this game doesn't go his way, we still have a third game here.
Yeah, I think his position would have been good if he could cast the Mana Leak.
Yeah.
But obviously he could not. So yeah, he's gonna run into a subtlety there that's going to make him pack it up, looks like. Yeah, the Chalice on 1 plus a Teferi, I think, was just too much.
So actually getting to see the power of Chalice of the Void, a card, looking at the matchup, still not sure if it's how good it actually is, but obviously had a very good impact in that game. And we're going to go into game 3 with Hammer on the play versus a 4-color control list.
Yes. So I would imagine that it would favor our hammer player on the play.
Mhm.
I think this matchup is a lot closer than I thought. I think the main component is playing that chalice on one, and Ethan doing that on the draw is just a lot harder.
Absolutely.
So the thing is outside of counter spells, really the only once chalice hits the board, the only way Junhwan has to get out under it is playing an Urza Saga and getting a Haywire Mite off of the Saga. That's the only way he can get rid of it.
Mhm. And the Teferi lines up pretty well too. I think we saw Teferi do a lot of good work in that game, turning off the counter magic. Like, are you bringing in Needle to deal with that card specifically?
I don't think so. I think that's, you know, playing a bit too scared. The other thing too is I think one of the best parts of Teferi in this matchup, especially because Junhwan is splashing blue, is like shutting off counter spells, shutting off Sigarda's Aid on hammers potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you're really even dealing with the best part of the card in the matchup.
While we've got a second here, I do want to remind our listeners, one, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Make sure you are checking out all the wonderful things we have here on Twitch, but also check us out on YouTube. We do have VODs for this event, as well as some previous events on YouTube. You can check them out at your leisure. We also do have a Legacy 5K coming up. So if you are a modern player who also happens to love Legacy, like a lot of us do, on February 11th, there is a 5K, $100 if you register before Wednesday, February 8th, and $125 after. The last event did sell out. So if you are planning on playing that and you're in the Millersville, Lancaster area in Pennsylvania, definitely stop by the store. If you win, you can probably use your earnings to pre-order some cards for the upcoming set for Rexia. All will be one. Al Central will be selling sealed product as well as singles. So if you're interested in purchasing any of that, you could do that with our discount code. It is OWL OWL RCQ 0128. That's today's date. That will get you 10% off at owlcentralgames.com.
Yeah, use that code. You're gonna be at the Legacy 5K, right?
I will be at the Legacy
Okay.
5K, yeah. I am very excited because I have not gotten to play as much Delver as I want in paper in a while, so I'm very excited to get back in the pilot seat and try to see if I can take down an event.
Yeah, I think I'm getting wrapped up into playing it, and I'm probably also gonna be playing Delver.
It's the best deck in the format, I think. It's either that or Initiative right now, based on numbers. And I have the most reps with Delver. I think you're in the same boat.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a Delver player at heart, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I've tried not to be, and then it just all comes back to Brainstorm and Delver. I'm just like, yeah, nothing else is really better.
Nothing hits quite as well as that. That you're like, 2 lands, let's shuffle these away, and you hit just like the nuts.
Yeah. Oh.
Lovely. Oh man.
So you enjoy it. I'm just thinking of it as a bummer.
No.
Yeah. Like I played Elves for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
With my buddy Albert, who still plays in Legacy.
Yeah, Elves. I mean, Elves is a viable deck. I think there's a lot of innovations that have happened in the Legacy format for that deck. And if you're interested in playing that, it's not a bad choice.
Yep.
Maybe not as good as a turn 1 Esper Sentinel.
Yeah, I believe Junyuan is also on 6 cards. And subtlety right away. This tells me this is also how Ethan feels about this matchup too. Is I don't want this Esper Sentinel to be in play right away. I want to be able to cast some spells very early. Being 2 for winning himself for Junhwan to put it right back on top. That is very interesting.
Yeah, especially getting rid of a Dress Down, which is a fantastic card in this matchup.
Absolutely.
But we end up seeing the Esper Sentinel coming into play. Ethan's going to fetch using that Polluted Delta, and we're going to see Rafine's Tower make its 3rd appearance.
This is really Ethan's game plan the whole time. Is he really values limiting the mana of the hammer player? Like you're looking at it here, and Ethan really didn't gain a whole lot besides making Junhwan tap a land on turn 2. That's all he really gained here from the subtlety for 2 for 1 himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and apparently Ethan thinks it's worth it. So
yep.
Hopefully it works out. We're going to see an untap after Zheng ends up playing a Flooded Strand. Ethan untaps his tower. Shocks in a breeding pool here. Goes down to 17 points of life. and it's going to cast Prismatic Ending, and we're going to pay that little tax for Esper Sentinel, but we see a fetch from Zheng. What do you expect to come out here?
Spell Pierce or Blacksmith Skill, either one.
Oh.
I'm not sure if Junyuan has both in his hand. I'm not sure which one I'd value more. Probably the Blacksmith Skill. I think it would Spell Pierce. Okay,
Spell Pierce, yeah.
Spell Pierce.
That's a huge tempo play.
That is massive.
That's one of the downsides. I mean, you pay the 1 cost for that trigger, and you sometimes get punished. We see a Esper Sentinel coming into play here. Or sorry, a Ink Moth Nexus. Esper Sentinel's going to crash across into the red zone. Ethan's down to 16 points of life.
And it's really important for Ethan there. Junyuan did not have a play while Ethan was tapped out, which I think is huge. And this is a big play.
Chalice the Void for 1.
This is the only reason we would value Spell Pierce over Blacksmith Skill if Junyuan happened to have both.
Get a trigger. I'm going to draw a card.
It looked blue.
It did look blue. Was it actually blue?
I don't know.
Could have been a trick of the light. The playmat's blue too, right?
Yeah, his body language didn't seem like he liked this Chalice entering play.
No, if it comes into play. You see the land come into play afterward for Ethan. And now we untap, and you've got to navigate through this game that involves the Chalice on 1 now. The Esper Sentinel's going to attack in for 1 point.
I did see an Urza Saga hiding out. So we can get Haywire Might eventually in. Ooh, that's a good play. Sword.
Yeah, Sword of Fire and Ice enters the battlefield, as well as that Urza Saga.
Which was likely one of the draw steps, because we would have played that last turn for sure. If we didn't have a counterspell for the Chalice at the very least.
Interesting, the sequencing too, because I would have expected to play the Saga, use that to tap for mana, and then hold up the blue source. But
yep.
I think maybe Zhang's not even interested in representing a Spell Pierce or something like that here.
Yeah, through the Chalice, it's like, maybe not a whole lot to gain. It's free to do, so it's probably the right technical play, but it's not going to matter, I think, in the grand scheme here.
An untap for Ethan. See an island coming into play. We're pay 3 mana. We're going to put Kira into our hand and pass it back to Zheng.
It's also a little bit of a sign of weakness from Ethan's hand, because the sword is a threat.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a card that can very easily take over this game. Urza Saga is going to tick up to 2 mana.
Because I think if Ethan had Leyline Binding, he would have done it on his turn to play around, well, I guess Mana Leak, I guess, is a card you would still get got by here.
No equip. We're just going to see Esper Sentinel come into the battlefield, take 1 point, Ethan. And we're passing the turn back.
So I guess we're just making a Saga token here.
Ethan's going to untap and put into play a Flooded Strand. We're going to pay 2 mana, make a construct.
And notably, Junyuan does not have a green source of mana for the Haywire Might as of yet. He's kind of doing the double splash here in Hammer.
Yeah, the blue splash is definitely the heavier one, but you do see the occasional, a Temple Garden or something like that to activate the Might. Springleaf Drum is probably the better source of green mana.
Yeah. So we're going to see a fetch in response, I think, to the Urza Saga trigger.
So what is he going to do so far? Got a couple things waiting around here. What would you want to cast it for 5 mana at the spot if you're Ethan?
I mean, the only thing that really comes to mind is Solitude. But I'm interested to see what he's scared of out of the Saga getting. I really think of a whole lot of 1 mana cards that would turn off a Solitude or turn off a card in your hand where you'd have to cast it now.
Yeah, I mean, potentially Pithing Needle, I guess, if you're afraid of just getting like
That's very true. So, okay, that's exactly what that was. You're absolutely right.
So it looks like we're still debating here. The Saga is currently going up to 3. We are still in the first main phase. It looks like we're going to be floating 1 generic mana, and then we're going to be searching the library for our Urza Saga, getting a spell with converted mana cost 1 or less, and putting that into play. And it looks like it might be the Haywire might, but like you mentioned before, there's no green source currently, so it's just going to be exposed for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this give and take, right? Of if Junyuan doesn't have another Urza Saga, he doesn't really probably going to have another opportunity to get rid of it. So maybe he has to just roll the dice, hope this doesn't die, and hope he draws a green source of mana.
See the one generic mana floating from the Urza Saga, represented by a die above Esper Sentinel. In the main phase, able to actually cast some spells here. You do see a Colossus Hammer in the hand of Zheng, as well as a Stoneforge Mystic and a Sigarda Zade.
And I believe the last card is Blacksmith Skill.
Okay. I mean, it's a shame too, because that Chalice is doing a lot of work right now.
It seems like the game plan for Ethan. I wasn't sure if it was going to be it, but it seems like what the matchup is centered around is this Chalice for 1.
Zheng's got to figure out a way to get through this game. This is a win-in for top 8 right now.
Yep. And we're going to go for a Sword Equip on the Esper Sentinel. Which shouldn't prompt action because it doesn't give pro white.
And it looks like there might be a Leyline Binding hiding in Ethan's hand as well. So if you're Ethan, you got to think about how you're going to try to navigate this game, right? And whether that equip right now really matters if you're putting it on a Esper Sentinel.
Yeah, he's got to play this give and take. He doesn't want to die to the board, but he is kind of interested in getting this might off the board at some point before Junyuan draws the green mana. But the Saga token is fairly large. The sword is a threat. And we're going to Leyline Binding. I would assume the sword maybe.
Wallace is going to pay the 1 for the trigger from the Esper Sentinel. And Leyline Binding is going to target the sword. I'm not sure Zhang's going to have any responses. And we see the sword is going to be binded, I believe.
Yep. So I think the only castable card in Junyuan's hand is a Stoneforge Mystic. So we just gotta wonder if is it worth it to play it here or not. And he's gonna decline, at least of right now.
So we see those creatures enter the battlefield, counting up. That should be 3 points of damage for the construct, 1 point from the Esper Sentinel, so 4 total. And we're going to follow that up with a Stoneforged Mystic, which is in a fetch, and not exactly sure what you want to find here, but I'm assuming it's not going to be a 1-drop.
Yeah, I would imagine it's, I don't know if Junyuan has a copy of Nettle Cyst. That would be my go-to here. He does not. So maybe just the Cauldron. Oh, another hammer. Okay.
Okay, Cauldron. We see no Cauldron complete, just a Colossus Hammer instead. I believe that's hammer number 2, if I'm correct.
Just hammer number 2. So very interesting here. Maybe Cauldron's out of the deck. Obviously, we get to put into play off a Stoneforge Mystic if we activate it, but we don't have a way to equip it yet.
Mm-hmm. We see an untap from Ethan. 5 mana. And a decent amount of pressure coming from this construct and Esper Sentinel, both taxing our life total and our mana. And he's going to pass the turn back to Zheng.
Yeah, I believe Ethan is at 8, but I'm not 100% sure.
How do we proceed from here?
I think Ethan's turns are relatively straightforward, depending on what cards he has in his hands. For Junyuan, it is very difficult to navigate this, I think.
I mean, honestly, for having that Chalice come down so early, I think he's doing a fantastic job just trying to, bob and weave through this game while drawing cards that are, at this point, are still uncastable.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't think, I don't know. Ethan could still have a Solitude, I guess, this game, because he had to Leyline Binding the sword, I think, last turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the card I'm most concerned about, like a hard cast Solitude, but maybe Junyuan can't beat it. But looks like he's going to try to beat it. And there is a Solitude.
There's Solitude. So we're going to pay 5 mana. Solitude. And we're going to exile that construct.
Interesting.
So away it goes. We're going to see another 3 life for Zheng, back up to 20. But I don't think you're in a spot you really even care about the life anymore.
Yep. Yeah, I even had a bit of a decision there. Is get rid of the Haywire Might and trade, or just have the 3/2 lifelinker. I'm not sure what is right. It really depends on Ethan's hand, but I think I would have geared towards killing the Might. I feel like that's the way you lose this game.
Yeah, once we find green mana for Zheng, you expect that the Chalice of Void is going to eat it, but we do Secure here coming in, and now we're going to have our Solitude get what +1/+1 in Vigilance.
And this is the plus side of what Ethan did, is you get a Vigilance lifelink attacker. And of course, Ethan could maybe have an answer, but at the same time, I feel like he would have played an answer on the Haywire Might, because you can't really respond to just an untapped Temple Garden, for instance.
So you're looking at the top card as we get the turn back to Zheng.
Ethan, if he attacked, will go to 12.
And if you're thinking about it from Ethan's spot, that lifelink on the Solitude is huge. I mean, like,
Yes.
that's the thing that's gonna hopefully get him out of range of, you know, a green source and a hammer, just winning the game out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think Ethan's play was a bit more high risk, but this is the reward, is you just get to keep doing this and eventually almost get out of range. Say 2 more attacks with this Solitude.
Another 4 points coming in. Zheng's gonna be down to 13. We're gonna see Wallace up to 12.
I believe he's at 16, yes.
16, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's massive difference here. It seems like Ethan's definitely in the driver's seat now.
And we're going to put in a hammer.
Into play.
So I'm very interested if Junyuan had the Cauldron Complete in his deck, because I feel like that would have done something in this game, but maybe he took it out.
Possibly. I mean, I think it's especially on defense here, it would have been fine. I think if it actually came down early, it would have been a great attacker. And now we're seeing that life total get out of way, and Zheng just passes the turn back to Ethan.
And there is a land hanging out at the bottom there that I did not realize until this moment. There's a Hall of the Storm Giants.
Oh gosh,
lurking down there. I don't think it'll do a whole lot this game. We got a lot of, chump blockers, even with the Inkmoth Nexus on top of all these 1/1s and 1/2s, but it is lurking down there.
I'm glad you did bring up the Inkmoth Nexus. That is a card that, regardless of what your life total is, Ethan needs to be aware that could actually just end the game. If you end up finding the right spell off the top. So
yeah, it's also maybe, I don't know, Junyuan maybe should have been attacking with it maybe a few turns, but maybe trying to represent something.
Another 4 points coming in for Wallace, so up to 20 for him and down to 9 for Zheng.
Yeah, I'm still in the boat. If I'm Ethan, I just want to get that Might off the board as soon as I draw a card that has the ability to do so. And a Chalice for 2.
Oh, jeez. Pay
And
the
you
extra
pay
1 for
this.
Esper Sentinel.
Yep. And see a mana leak that he can cast this time. There is no Teferi.
And honestly, that extra 1 mana that you just paid for the
Yep.
Esper Sentinel is the difference between this resolving and not resolving.
Very interesting.
So we're still live for the 2 drops. Pure Steel Paladin would be huge here. Let's see what Zhang's going to do here with an untapped 3 mana Inkmoth next. The tools are here, just really 1 card away from a very easy win, I think.
Yep.
And we're passing it back. Wallace untaps, draws a card.
I believe it's a Wear Tear.
Oh, it is a Wear Tear.
That's pretty good.
Coming in again with the Solitude. I think this is the 4th time it's attacking here.
Yeah. So we're gonna go to 24, and we started at 8 life. So yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, once again, I think that was like the turning point of this game. I would like to say that it was a Chalice, and I think maybe arguably it is, but the Solitude has had a huge impact on this game.
I think it was the hardest decision point of this game for Ethan. Was, do I kill the Haywire Might and basically trade off with a Saga token, or do I just say, hey, I'm just going to kill your Saga token and this is going to be my win condition? And Ethan might be right here. He's proving me wrong right now, because outside of the Solitude, he really only had a Kahira to really close the game out.
Stoneforge Mystic's going to run under the bus. A Flooded Strand for Ethan before passing it back to Zheng. And now we are trying to figure out, if you're Zheng, what do you want to get out of this spot? I mean, obviously green mana would be fantastic. Maybe getting that Pure Steel Paladin into play. But we're just going to pass the turn instead.
We're just going to pass.
Wallace is going to crack that Flooded Strand, go down to 23 life. Probably get a tapped land. We see a Hallowed Fountain come into play tapped.
I feel like Junyuan's hand is rather a bunch of 1-drops or a bunch of counter spells and maybe some 2-drops combined with the 1-drops, because I feel like you want to deploy your 2-drops if you have them, just in case you draw the green mana. Then that turn opens up. Maybe you get, like, you draw out a counter spell on your 2-drop. That'll open up the turn when maybe you draw the green mana and deploy all your 1-drops and start going at it.
Another attack for 4, and it looks like we're gonna see just
is that no? Okay. He looked like he double blocked.
Yeah.
I was like, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Oh, that's a bold play. Yeah, we see it just rumble in, it looks like, and we're gonna see Zheng go down to 5, drawing a card as they get the turn passed back to them, and the time is running out here if you're Zheng.
Yes.
Earth Saga is not the worst thing though. 4 minutes left in the round for these players as well, so that is definitely a concern if you're either of them. I'm not sure if a draw is good for you. Oh.
Yeah, we're gonna see a fused Wear Tear. One of them is gonna target the Saga.
Yeah.
Don't know where the other one's going. I would hope it's the Haywire Might. Yeah,
seems to be the Might. One of the things I pro con, I'm not sure what you want to call it right now, especially. But Earth Saga is an enchantment, right? It's a saga, good for your Tarmogoyfs, sometimes really awkward, especially versus Teferi, and in this case, Wear Tear.
Yep. Yeah, I think Ethan took a few risky lines here, but it's not. I don't think it's going to bite him in the butt at the end. I think I would have, as soon as I drew that Wear Tear too, I think the only way you lose this game is if the Haywire Might gets rid of the Chalice, right?
Yeah.
But
and now things, I think, out of ways to actually get that Chalice of the Void out of here, right?
So, yeah, so I think now the door is officially shut. Because the Haywire Might is in our graveyard. We don't have a way to get this Chalice off the board in our 75 beyond that.
But now I'm surprised. We talked about this before. Like, that Inkball Nexus has not attacked a single time.
Yeah.
And if it had, maybe, you combine this with maybe a mistrigger from a Blacksmith skill or something like that, you can probably sneak in the points. But once again, I think that door is closed as well.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, it's too much. And we're gonna boot up the Inkmoth Nexus just to block, it looks like.
So to come in and block the Solitude. Okay, with Ethan. It's gonna go under the bus. We're gonna see a -1/-1 counter onto the Solitude. Now back down to a measly 3/2 again.
Yep.
We're gonna pass the turn back to Zheng, and I think that is going to be the game.
It's a bunch of 1-drops. Yep, that's it.
The Esper Sentinels, the Colossus Hammers, the Sigarda's Aids, the Blacksmith skills, just stranded in the hand because of that Chalice.